Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking closely at Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. Think of this as a way to quickly grasp some really, powerful ideas about living a more meaningful life.
Exactly. It's all drawn from these conversations between Mitch, the author, and his old college professor who is dying.
Right. So Mitch Albom reconnects with Morrie Schwartz, his former sociology professor, who's facing ALS.
And their meetings, every Tuesday, they sort of became this unplanned last class about, what really matters.
So picture it. Mitch goes to Morrie's study every Tuesday. No formal lectures, none of that. Their syllabus was basically life itself.
They talked about love, work, community, family, aging, forgiveness, death, all the big stuff.
Yeah. No books needed, but the final paper, I guess you could say, is the book itself.
And for you listening, the goal today is really to pull out some of the core lessons from those Tuesdays. We're focusing on the insights that might help, navigate life's complexities and maybe challenge some societal pressures.
Okay, so let's start with Morrie himself. Who was he before all this, and what exactly was happening to him?
Well, Morrie Schwartz taught sociology at Brandeis University for over 30 years. But he wasn't just some stuffy academic.
Yeah.
No, he was really vibrant, loved dancing. He'd go to these dance-free nights, just let loose to rock, blues, whatever, didn't care who was watching. Pure joy for him.
That makes what happened next even tougher, I suppose.
Yeah. So this incredibly active guy gets diagnosed with ALS in the summer of '94. Looking back, the first hint was giving up dancing. He had breathing problems, thought it was asthma at first.
And ALS, remind us.
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a really tough one. Morrie had this vivid description for it, like a lit candle melting your nerves.
Wow.
Yeah, you lose control of your body, basically. Starts usually in the legs, moves up, eventually affects breathing. The typical timeline they gave him was maybe 5 years.
But even with that diagnosis, he kept teaching.
He did. His final college course in the fall of '94, and he was totally open with his students about it. Said, if this is too much, you can drop the class.
That's incredible strength, really.
It absolutely speaks volumes about him. Now, to understand why these Tuesdays happened, we kind of need to see where Mitch was at in his life.
Right. So after college, Mitch's life took a different turn. Journalism.
Yeah, he got really into it. Became a successful sports columnist in Detroit. Very busy, very driven.
And there was a reason for that drive, wasn't there? Something about his uncle?
Exactly. His uncle died from pancreatic cancer. And that really hit Mitch hard, made him feel like time was incredibly precious,
So he just poured everything into work, achievements, success.
Pretty much. Became consumed by it. And like often happens, life gets busy, right? He lost touch with Morrie completely.
Didn't even know he was sick.
Nope. Admits he just tossed mail from Brandeis, figured it was donation requests.
So how did they reconnect?
Pure chance, almost. Mitch is flicking channels one night, sees Ted Koppel on Nightline.
And there's Morrie.
And there's Morrie. Being interviewed. Looking frail, obviously, but still so alive with wisdom. It just struck a chord with Mitch. He had to reach out.
So he goes to visit, and that first visit, it sounds like it was a bit of a clash of worlds.
Oh, definitely. Mitch pulls up to Morrie's house in West Newton, and he's literally still on a work call.
Right up to the last second.
Yeah. Still totally immersed in that fast-paced world. He said later he felt really unprepared for Morrie's physical decline. It was a shock.
You can imagine. The busy, successful journalist versus the professor facing his mortality, focused on totally different things.
Exactly. That contrast is stark. Mitch, all about achievement, deadlines. Morrie, now focused on relationships, reflection, just being present.
But Morrie welcomed him warmly.
Immediately, no hesitation, despite the years. But Mitch felt it, He felt the gap between the idealistic student Morrie remembered and the driven guy he'd become.
And that sets the stage for these conversations, these Tuesday lessons.
It really does. And Morrie starts sharing these incredibly profound thoughts on life, death, everything.
What was one of the first big ideas he shared?
Well, this idea that, sure, dying is sad, but living unhappily, that's maybe the real tragedy. He was pretty critical of our culture, saying it doesn't really help people feel good about themselves. He encouraged creating your own personal culture.
Create your own culture. What did he mean by that exactly? Like, choose your own values?
Yeah, I think so. Like, consciously decide what matters to you. Is it really the next promotion, or is it, deep connections, empathy over competition, stuff like that, instead of just buying into what society pushes?
Makes sense. He also mentioned something about the tension of opposites.
Right. Life pulling you in different directions all the time.
Yeah.
But his core belief through all that struggle, love always wins.
Simple, but powerful, especially coming from someone facing what he was facing.
It really is. It's not about being naive. He saw the fights, the ego, the fear, but choosing love, choosing connection, that was the answer. It kind of reframes things, doesn't it?
It does. Now, his illness meant he became increasingly dependent on others. How did he handle that? That must have been incredibly hard.
It was, initially, very hard.
Yeah.
Losing independence is tough for anyone. But he reached a point where he started to, as he put it, enjoy the process.
Enjoy it. How?
He saw it almost like returning to being a baby, being completely cared for, that unconditional love and attention.
Yeah.
He realized deep down, maybe that's something everyone kind of longs for.
That's quite a shift in perspective.
Isn't it? And even though his body was failing, his mind and spirit stayed incredibly engaged with the world.
He still followed the news?
Oh, yeah. But he found himself feeling things much more deeply, more empathy. He talked about the war in Bosnia, how much his suffering there affected him.
Which must have been a contrast to Mitch's experience as a journalist, maybe being a bit more detached.
Exactly. For Morrie, feeling that connection, that empathy, even for strangers, was vital. He actually said that love is the only rational act. It underscores how central connection was for him.
Okay, so let's dive into some more of those key lessons from their Tuesdays. What about regrets?
Regrets. Morrie felt that too many people get to the end filled with them. Why? Because they don't stop and really look at their lives.
They don't ask the hard questions.
Right. Like, is this really it? Is this what I want? He said you need someone sometimes to kind of probe you in that direction, push you to be honest with yourself.
That makes sense. And what about facing death itself? His view was pretty unique there, too.
It was. He didn't see knowing you're going to die as purely negative. He thought it could actually make you more involved in living right now.
How so?
By making you appreciate the present. He mentioned a Buddhist practice asking yourself every morning, is today the day? Am I ready?
Wow, that's intense.
It is, but it's about focus,
Really?
right? Am I living the way I want to be living today? It really brings urgency and meaning to the everyday.
Definitely shifts your perspective. They also talked about aging, which so many people fear.
Oh, totally. But Morrie flipped that. He saw aging as growth, as wisdom.
Not decline.
No. He argued that wanting to stay young forever meant wanting to stay ignorant, basically. Missing out on all the learning that comes with experience.
So if you desperately want to be young again.
He thought it often reflected an unsatisfied life. You're looking back because you're not fulfilled now. It really challenges our culture's obsession with youth, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. What do you think drives that obsession?
Oh, it's complex. Probably fear of irrelevance, fear of death itself,
Yeah.
maybe. But Morrie's view encourages embracing the journey, not trying to reverse it.
And that ties into what he said about materialism, right?
Exactly. He saw that constant need to buy things, to gobble up something new,
Yeah.
as often being a substitute.
A substitute for what? Love. Connection.
Yeah. For genuine human connection. He believed real satisfaction comes not from getting, but from giving. Offering what you have, your time, your concern, telling your stories. Contributing, not just consuming.
That feels very relevant today. Forgiveness was another big one for them.
Huge. Morrie really stressed forgiving yourself and forgiving others. And his big message there was, don't wait.
Don't put it off.
No. He felt lucky, in a way, to have the time he had left to try and mend fences, to make things right. He saw it as a gift that time.
And relationships were key, family especially.
Absolutely central. He called family the source of spiritual security, that deep, unconditional support that money or fame just can't buy.
And he respected his own kids' lives even as he was dying.
Totally. He wanted them to live their lives fully, not just hover around him out of obligation.
We mentioned his view on dependency changing earlier. Can we revisit that? It's quite profound.
It really is. What started as difficult, losing his independence, he eventually came to see differently. Like we said, almost like being a baby again.
Finding comfort in being cared for.
Yes, and recognizing that maybe we all have that fundamental need for touch, for care, for that kind of attention, you know?
Yeah.
He found an unexpected sort of peace in it.
He also talked about how similar we all are deep down.
Yeah, that facing death brings it into focus. We all start the same way, birth. We'll end the same way, death. Underneath all the surface differences, he believed, we're much more alike than we realize.
Okay, what about detachment? That sounds a bit cold, maybe?
It can sound that way, but his take was different. It wasn't about not feeling things. It was the opposite.
Feel things fully.
Exactly. Dive into the emotion, love, grief, fear, whatever it is. Experience it completely. Then, because you fully felt it and understood it, you can detach from it without it controlling you.
So it's not suppression, it's processing.
Right, like watching a wave. You acknowledge its power, you feel it, but you don't have to get swept away forever. You let it pass through.
And his idea of really living.
For Morrie, it was about being responsive to others, engaged, connected. That was living, not just existing. He also seemed to have a clear sense of when his quality of life would reach a point where he'd be ready to say goodbye.
That takes incredible self-awareness.
It does. It all seems connected, doesn't it? Making peace with dying helps you make peace with living.
Yeah, confronting mortality clarifies what truly matters.
Absolutely. And those connections, the love you create, that doesn't just vanish when someone dies.
Death ends a life, not a relationship.
That's the one. Such a powerful thought. The love, the impact, it remains.
Did he ever describe what an ideal day would look like for him if he were healthy again?
He did. And it wasn't anything wildly extravagant.
No.
No. Simple things. Get up, do some exercise, have a nice breakfast, lunch with friends, a walk in nature.
Just appreciating the everyday stuff.
Exactly. Meaningful conversations, maybe a dance. Just enjoying connection and simple pleasures.
And finally, that story he told Mitch about the little wave.
Ah, yeah. The little wave parable. It's beautiful. This little wave is approaching the shore, and it's terrified, right? It's going to crash, cease to be a wave.
Total annihilation from its perspective.
Right. But then another older wave tells it, you're not just a wave. You're part of the ocean.
Ah, so the end isn't really an end.
It's a transformation, a return to the whole. It perfectly captures Morrie's idea that we're all part of something much larger than ourselves, and death is just a natural transition within that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Tuesdays with Morrie, what's the main takeaway? The core wisdom here?
I think at its heart, it's really a powerful guide to living more meaningfully. It's about facing mortality, not with dread, but using it as a lens to clarify what truly matters now.
Prioritizing love, connection.
Exactly. Choosing those things over, the endless chase for status or stuff. And it's about that constant reflection, forgiving, connecting, finding peace.
Yeah. We've walked through Morrie's life, the illness, Mitch's own journey, their reunion, and all these incredible lessons. From Morrie dancing freely to his openness about dying to these powerful ideas about love and regret. These are the things that really stick.
And hopefully, for you listening, this dive has given you a solid but also manageable grasp of the key insights. It's about letting these ideas sink in, maybe spark something for you.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. Think about one part of your own life. Is there an area where maybe you're, as Morrie might say, sleepwalking, perhaps focusing more on external goals than on those deeper connections?
Yeah. How might Morrie's perspective, his focus on love, forgiveness, being truly present, maybe nudge you to shift that focus, even just a little, to think about your own values?
It's definitely a conversation worth continuing with yourself. Hopefully this deep dive has given you some really valuable things to think about.